Imagine for a second you had to write a guide for the future. You know, a set of rules for rebuilding everything after some kind of catastrophe. What would you put on it? It's a pretty wild thought experiment, right? Well, for one mysterious man, this wasn't an experiment at all. It was a very, very real project.
So picture this. It's 1980, deep in rural Georgia, and this massive granite structure just appears. For the next 4 decades, it stood there a total enigma. People started calling it America's Stonehenge. It was supposed to be a set of principles for a new age of reason, all paid for by a man who, for all intents and purposes, didn't even exist.
And then, just as mysteriously as it showed up, it was gone, obliterated in an explosion, turning a weird local landmark into a federal crime scene overnight.
Okay, let's get into it. This is the incredible story of the Georgia Guidestones. What they were, what they said, and why they ended up in a pile of dust.
Now, you'd think we'd start at the beginning, but to really understand the life of this monument, we have to start with its death, because how it ended is a huge piece of the puzzle.
It all came to a head on July 6, 2022. An explosion in the pre-dawn quiet shattered one of the slabs. By that evening, authorities decided the rest of it was a safety hazard and tore the whole thing down. And just like that, it was over.
So, why would somebody want to destroy a monument? Well, the answer isn't in the stone itself, but in the words carved into it. And this is where the story gets really wild. It all boils down to this one number, 500 million. This single figure is at the heart of all the fear, all the anger, and all the conspiracy theories. This was the very first of the 10 guides. Maintain humanity under 500,000 million. Now, think about that. The world's population is pushing 8 billion. So you can see why this was immediately seen by many as a terrifying call for mass depopulation. Now, to be fair, the other 9 guides were a lot less alarming. They talked about things like guiding reproduction wisely, uniting humanity with a new language, and ruling with tempered reason. You know, balancing rights with social duties. But that first rule, it always cast a very, very long shadow over everything else.
And what really poured gasoline on this fire was the fact that no one knew who built it. The man behind it all used a fake name, Rosicrucian. He was a ghost who believed humanity was headed straight for a cliff.
The biggest clue we have into his thinking is a book he wrote called Common Sense Renewed. He actually mailed copies of it to thousands of political leaders around the world. In it, he laid out his whole philosophy, that overpopulation and our lack of reason were gonna be the end of us.
But here's the really fascinating part. When you read his ideas, you see this strange tension. On the one hand, he's talking about noble goals from the Enlightenment, logic, reason, helping humanity. But the way he suggests getting there, it feels a lot like what some would call soft totalitarianism. The only way to reach his utopia was through a whole lot of authoritarian control. It's this philosophy of control, kind of dressed up in the language of rationality.
So, let's recap. We've got a mysterious author and a message that, let's be honest, sounds pretty scary. What does that create? Well, it creates the perfect lightning rod for conspiracy theories. The Guidestones basically became a Rorschach test in stone. People saw whatever they were most afraid of. And as one person put it, the deeper you go down this rabbit hole, the weirder it gets. For a lot of people, these stones weren't a guide. They were proof of a sinister, secret plot.
The theories claimed the Guidestones were basically a mission statement from the so-called puppet masters who secretly run the world.
A group often just called the Illuminati, who were supposedly plotting a new world order. And these secret societies were said to have hidden ties to government agencies like DARPA, the Pentagon's high-tech research division. It was all part of what some people started calling the cult, this powerful group that has to control the story to keep its power.
Sometimes they'd even bring in these esoteric ideas like Wetiko, an old concept of a mind virus, a spirit of consumption that drives humanity to self-destruction. And eventually,
These abstract fears found a modern face in figures like Bill Gates. Suddenly, his work in global health was seen through this really suspicious lens. For anyone looking for a conspiracy, the Guidestones connected all the dots. So, after 42 years of sitting there, sparking all these whispers and debates, the monument is gone. What are we left with now? Well, we're left with a really profound irony, one you just can't ignore. A monument built to guide humanity through a future apocalypse couldn't even survive our own chaotic present. If you go to these coordinates today, you'll find nothing, just an empty patch of grass. The stones are gone, but the arguments, the mystery, the questions they raised, they're all still here. That physical void is a perfect mirror for the philosophical one it left behind.
And that leaves us with one last kind of haunting question. The Guidestones were one person's flawed attempt at a roadmap for humanity. We didn't just disagree with it, we destroyed it. So if we can't even agree on a hypothetical guide for the future, what does that say about our ability to get through the present?